So, what kind of music do you listen to?
Quite a bit, actually. Love metal, hard rock. Love your guys' stuff. Let's see, I've been listening to Resband, Barren Cross, Bloodgood, Leviticus, Jerusalem, Messiah Prophet, Philadelphia, Barnabas, Daniel Band, Shout, and Saint, which I think is the heaviest of them all, of course. But I could hear you guys playing with any of them. I've been listening to this new metal band called First Strike. Their album was produced by Mike Rowe of the 77s. I love the 77s, that whole post-punk new wave scene, bands like Youth Choir, The Lifesavers, and LSU, which is the new version of The Lifesavers, and it's insane. Undercover, Vector, Charlie Peacock, Bill Mason Band, Mad at the World, Andy McCarroll and Moral Support, The Technos in 3D, Quick Flight, 441, Steve Taylor and Daniel Amos, of course, and even punk stuff like The Lead and this new underground band from Texas that I heard about at Cornerstone called One Bad Pig. And then there's the mainstay rock acts. You got to love them. You know, Larry Norman, Randy Stonehill, Daryl Mansfield, Servant, Petra, DeGarmo and Key, Rick Kua, Prodigal, Kerry Livgren and AD, Idle Cure, Sweet Comfort Band, Phil Keggy, Rob Castle's band, Whiteheart, Kenny Marks, Mark Hurd, Pat Terry, and then all that great stuff from the old days. My uncle turned me on to some crazy cool Jesus music that I still really dig, like Keith Green, Tom Howard, Concrete Rubber Band, Randy Matthews, Bryn Hayworth. He actually opened for Clapton, Ishmael United, so many others. But you know what I really love is when I find a regular band, like on MTV and the radio, that just has like a Christian perspective on things. I've been really into Bob Dylan, The Alarm, Simple Minds, The Call, After the Fire, Bruce Cockburn, Violent Femmes, this wicked metal band from Chicago called Trouble. Alpha Band, they actually backed up Dylan. And Kaja, that's what was left after the lead singer left Kaja Gugu. It's way cooler. And U2, of course. Oh, and I've been getting into this jazz fusion band called Koinonia. That's just what I carry around with me. I've got a lot more at home.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Christian Geeks Classic Rockcast. On this episode, Britt and I were able to spend some time with Chris White, writer, director, and producer of the new film Electric Jesus, which chronicles a summer in the life of a young Christian rock band in the mid-'80s. As you will see throughout our conversation, this is not a movie that paints the prettiest picture of what it was like to live a Christian life as a teen in the 80s. But if you're like us, this movie will feel like a slice taken right out of your life. So now let's get on with the interview. So welcome, Chris, to Christian Geeks Classic Rockcast. You are our third interview, so you fall in line with Mike Stand and Alan Aguirre from Scattered Few. So you're the third.
I feel a little embarrassed. I'm not worthy of the stage of this microphone you've given me. I'll try to do my best, but I'm a bit of a Christian rock fanboy, who stumbled into writing a couple of songs for this movie, Electric Jesus, writing the words to the songs. Yeah. But I'm both the Scattered Few and Altar Boys are just, they're some of my old favorites for sure. And I think
absolutely.
I regret that Altar Boys didn't get a name called out, but I do think we called out Scattered Few. I want to say we did in Eric's band list. I think we did.
I'm pretty sure. I know there was a Gut Level Music T-shirt at one point.
There was, but we should have drawn more attention to Altar Boys, because as I was writing the film and revisiting a lot of music that some of it I hadn't heard in a while, I realized how important Altar Boys was for me. Like, that was really a band that I was, I came up at a time when, so I grew up in the 80s, and I just, Michael Jackson, Thriller, Huey Lewis and the News Sports. These are my middle school records. So Hall & Oates, so I'm kind of tracking with the, pop music. And then I don't know quite how it happened, but I think it was Michael W. Smith 2 somehow I got that tape. Maybe my parents gave me that tape, and this world of Christian music opened up. And so by the time we get to 1985, 86, I'm sophisticating in that taste. And so I'm starting to learn and hear about, the cool stuff, the not obvious stuff. But it was certainly, that whole world's a big part of my growing up as a Southern Baptist youth group teenager in the 80s, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in good company here, because that's right in our wheelhouse. I mean, it is for me, because I think back to how I got started, and I've covered some of this in earlier episodes when we were trying to explain to people who we are and why we're doing this in the first place. It's, my parents started, spoon feeding me Christian music. And then suddenly one year they got me a boombox and a Steve Taylor tape and a Petra tape.
Oh,
and
man.
It was kind of over after that. I'm not sure they knew what they were getting themselves into, but yeah, so it was like,
Steve Taylor was, I guess he's my favorite, there was something about, cause he was funny, but the music was more, pop new wave, maybe, a lot of it, really awesome. And then more as he developed, he got a little bit edgier rock and roll and starts going towards that. And even into the Chicago Vera, era. And even now, I think his band now is great, Perfect Foil. Mm-hmm. And then again, my collaborator, Daniel Smith, collaborating with them on the Danielson Foil songs. And again, we have a new Steve Taylor song on our soundtrack record. It's Static Delight.
Oh, yeah.
So, and which I got to be, talk about a Christian rock geek's dream. I got to sit in the studio at John Mark Painter's house while Pete Furler and Jimmy Abag and Steve Taylor and Daniel Smith recorded that.
Oh, wow.
Static Delight. And it was like, it was not a song for the movie. It was a song for the credits of the movie. And Daniel and I have become great friends and collaborators through the whole thing. And I was just like, man, you got to get me in the room. I got to be in the room. I'm producing this movie, man. Come on, let me throw my weight around. Can I get in the room? And so he ran it by Steve, and he's like, yeah, you're allowed in, but nobody else. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to kill the vibe of the band. But when they were doing those gang vocals at the end of the song, they said I could sing on some of them. So I actually got to sing.
Yeah, I was going to ask if they let you play the triangle or something, but they let you.
Well, when you hear the end of the song and everybody's kind of just chanting the chorus, they were, Daniel was like, come on up. But it was super cool experience. And but yeah, the whole world of Electric Jesus is definitely inspired by my youth group days that were filled with Christian rock music. And sadly, I was not in a Christian band, or for that matter, a secular band. I was just never in a band. But it was the film is about a Christian band, but is more even about that the culture of growing up there that I just never seen. I'd never seen kids like us in movies and stuff, or Christian kids that talked like us, which I don't know about your experience, but it was like, this is what they never get right in movies and stuff. Like, we were very devout, and we would talk about very Christian-y things and talk about our faith very plainly, almost like adults. But we would also just joke, and, we were still teenagers somehow in that.
Yeah.
And there was this combination of just juvenile teenager, talking, guys hanging out talking, mixed with very spiritual conversations about discipleship and
oh yeah.
But I just it just rolled off the tongue. It wasn't forced. It didn't feel forced at all. But that was really the language of me and my friends when I was in high school.
Yeah, well, I think about, like, me and my friends would hang out. Like, we would go over to somebody's house, and we'd sit around and we'd listen to records, and we'd do Air Band to Rez or to Daniel Band or something. And then we'd go outside and shoot each other with bottle rockets for the next hour. Or, and some things I won't even talk about on here because they might get me in trouble even this many years later. But I mean, that was our life.
Yeah, there's a scene that I hope becomes an iconic rock movie scene in Electric Jesus where the kids are lip syncing to Stryper's "To Hell with the Devil." I love the scene. I insisted that it be long. It's almost the entire song, and it's just kids jumping around, lip syncing. And I was telling somebody, it's like that was another memory that I'd forgotten, like how much lip syncing, like, and not just like in the mirror in your room, which of course there's that, but around other people and like lip sync contests and I guess it's all kind of stupid sounding when you think about it, but it was just part and parcel of being a teenager in the 80s.
Yeah, because I think, because one of the things I was thinking about, and I even wrote a little note about this, about how this movie, I think you've done a really good job of capturing the 80s, because I think we were a little naive when it comes to the great big world out there, and all the things in it. But also at the same time, we didn't have the internet to distract us. We had video games to some degree, but we didn't have the whole world at our fingertips. We had whatever we found at the Christian bookstore. And that was kind of the world that I lived in. Occasionally we'd get down to the regular record store and see what the heathens were buying. But,
and you would hear about, I was not, we would watch MTV, I remember, being in a friend's house and we were aware of things on MTV, but, it was almost like a part of practicing your faith was, having some connection to Christian rock music, Christian pop music, and having a little bit of identity and pride with that. It was cool to be able to know about the Altar Boys and Steve Taylor and DA, and it was identity forming. And like my friend John Thompson, our music supervisor, he has a great podcast called True Tunes and the website True Tunes. But he was like, and if you were aware of a song in the world that was even somewhat Christian or rumored to be Christian, or there was something faith connected, like the song we use in the movie Kyrie by Mr. Mister.
Yep.
We all knew that had a Christian. It was actually more Catholic than Baptist, but there was a Christian connotation, and just the whiff of that or the appearance of that. And suddenly, we're on the bus going to camp and people are playing their jam boxes with Kyrie, because, hey, we got one, the most popular song on the radio this summer is one of ours.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I think about Harvest Rock Syndicate, which was another magazine back in the day they would approach the fringes, and Brian Quincy Newcomb was the editor.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so he would always look at, okay, here's somebody that's mainstream that also kind of shares our viewpoint on a lot of things. And the thing is, I've got a few records or CDs in my collection, and I can't for the life of me remember how they fit in, but there's one, I think it's an Australian or New Zealand band called Seven Stories.
Yeah. Oh
and
man.
their album's called Judges and Bagmen. Do you remember that?
That's a John Thompson question. I don't know that band. I was an artist like that to me was always T-Bone Burnett. I didn't know how he was connected to things Christian. I just knew he was. And then I found out later that he was playing in a band for Bob Dylan. Like, so he was kind of around Bob Dylan during his Christian phase, and T-Bone was kind of around those Jesus freak, that Jesus movement thing. Yeah, and so was producing music, of course, ended up producing Leslie Phillips' exit from Christian music record, The Turning, which is like one of the best Christian records ever, and then ended up marrying Leslie Phillips as well, and then producing the first few Sam Phillips records too. But T-Bone was one that I was like, I know he's somehow connected to Christians, but also Elvis Costello, and I don't know the story there. But later on, I came to find out, what that connection was. But there was if something, it wasn't just U2. U2 was a huge one, for Christian youth group kids that, and that's absolutely true. You know, those guys were in a pretty conservative Christian, you know, church, you know, when they were young and starting out and everything. And, but yeah, if there was somebody secular who was also a Christian, it was very cool to make that discovery and connect those dots.
Well, and that's one of the things we talked about with Mike Stand was, is it was always good to have something playing on the stereo in the car that sounded legit or made you feel like you fit in. And so in those moments when you could play U2 or you could play Mr. Mister, or you could play, you know, After the Fire, or you could, or whatever, those were the moments where you're like going, okay, I finally fit in, but I'm not compromising.
Right.
Well, for so long in the Christian evangelical sort of subculture, you know, the music was so isolated from the pop culture. And for the first time, kind of with the Jesus movement, but even that was just kind of the beginning stages. It was really the 80s when it was intentional to try to have its own sort of pop culture, like the pop culture has. And so it was just a really unique time, you know, and there's good and bad and, you know, all the extremes that were a part of it. I know, because like you said, I was in it, you know, like some of those scenes in the movie, I'm like, yep. I mean, you know, we'd preach the gospel and then you'd hit up on girls afterwards and, you know, or some of the guys would, and then you'd have the talks about it. Like, or should we be doing this? And you have all these sort of spiritual discussions about stuff that would have been normal for most kids. But for us, you know, questioning things and talking about things but you're still kids and you still have those emotions and you're not mature and, or maybe not kids, you know, when I was in bands, it was more like my 19, 20, kind of time frame. But anyway, so just a lot of that stuff I related to as well. It's just sort of that subculture of, like you're saying, that I don't know about balance, but that double edge of we're trying to do ministry because that's what we think we're supposed to do. And then on the other side, we're just normal kids trying to figure out the world and life and act, you know.
There's an actor, Judd Nelson, who's in Electric Jesus, and he plays a Pentecostal pastor. He plays the main character, Sarah's dad. And, of course, he's super famous, you know, Brat Pack, Judd Nelson from the 80s. Sure. One of the first meetings that he and I had, we're just talking about Christian youth group culture, you know, and he was just like, he was asking me a bunch of questions about it. And basically I said, no, we watched your movies. Like I remember seeing The Breakfast Club. I saw The Breakfast Club in high school. Maybe the more adventurous people saw St. Elmo's Fire. We saw you when you were on Moonlighting, you know, you were an acting hero. You know, I was an actor kid. And I said, and we were aware of you. And the thing, we just couldn't do anything you did in a movie. We could idolize you and think you were cool, but we couldn't do anything. We could dress like you. He thought it was pretty funny, but he was also just kind of impressed. He was just kind of like, wow, okay. So that was all going on. Yeah, that was all going on. And it's funny too, like, and you know, when we were having our character meeting, when he first got to set and we were meeting, we just all he wanted to talk about was the Old Testament. You know, he's really fascinating. I think he was raised Jewish maybe, but interested in all things Christian, Jewish, whatever, religious. And we're just, we're going through all these Old Testament stories and at some point, it just hit me. It was like, you know, man, if I could just go back to my youth group and tell my youth minister, just give me 30 years, 35 years, and I will be in a room with Judd Nelson and we'll be talking about the Bible. Like if we could just let me off the hook. Like, I didn't bring a friend this Wednesday night to youth group, but 35 years, I'll have a conversation about God with Judd Nelson. But no, awesome. But it was super fun, and it was kind of cool to have him be like fascinated with our with church youth group culture. Which, you know, I've told people, it's like, it's not that we didn't want to have sex, we just there was a thing where we were trying not to, and it wasn't, I think followed our generation was kind of a weird purity culture thing that it got kind of weird about that in a way, especially for young women. But for us, it was like, we were sincerely, it was acknowledged that we wanted to have sex and wanted to make out with girls and all, but it was also acknowledged that we were trying not to, because it would be sinful to do that. And we didn't want to do that. And the weird thing is we, in a lot of ways, we treated girls way more respectfully than a lot of guys did at that time. Just trying to be youth group kids, again, not that we didn't want to, and not that we didn't mess up, and that, certainly youth group kids, would have sex. But it was just a part of the culture that we were trying not to, which was, looking back on it, I think that's a really lovely way to grow up in a way, just, without that kind of complication of high school sex or going to parties and getting drunk. That was just not going to happen in my church youth group thing.
Well, that's and I've talked about that too before with friends and with my wife and other people too. It's like I felt coming out of my youth, I was pretty sheltered by the world standards, but at the same time, as an almost 50-year-old man, I don't know that I would want it any other way because of who it turned me into, who I became. So
I agree. Like, I think there are a lot of excesses and a lot of problems that were in that culture we grew up in. And some people ask me that about Electric Jesus because they assume that it's a parody, or maybe even a satire. And it's not. I mean, there's some things in it that I think the film is. I think the film is saying some things to church people and evangelicals in particular about maybe the way they idolize and put pressure on young people to kind of deliver the goods spiritually on behalf of the church and the adults. But it's really, I don't really have an axe to grind. I know what the problems are, and I know the ways that I wish maybe it had been a little different. But like you, I'm not sad about it. And a lot of people were, a lot of people experienced abuse and just bad stuff in that church context. And, thankfully that was very minimal, at least in the church youth group I was a part of.
Well, and like I think I explained to Steve after we both watched it, I said there were absolutely problems, like you said. I mean, there were absolute issues. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But at the same time, like you said, it was a very formative time for me in a very positive way. There were a lot of positive things that came out of it too. That today I'm a pastor. Today I'm. But of course, just like a Christian rock band, I have a church and a brewery, right? I mean, I'm not going to do it like other people.
Right.
But, and I was explaining that to Mike Stand. I said there was something about the edginess of, this isn't a game, this is serious, and the hard rocking sort of attitude that really captured me in a very positive way, I think, as that young person. But at the same time, like I said, I mean, I knew people who were legit. I mean, that they were just trying to be rock stars, and they were Christian, doing it in the Christian industry, which obviously is not, the ideal. But I wanted to ask just a little bit as we get into the movie. Is this your first movie? Like, what's some of your background in film? And
sure.
You said you were an acting kid and that sort of thing.
So my background, I went to a liberal arts college in South Carolina called Furman University that you probably heard of. And I was a drama. Yeah, exactly. All the time.
That should have been one of your songs.
F you all the time. Yeah. I was a drama kid there. And I really worked in marketing and advertising for many years and kind of got burned out on it, honestly, at a certain point, and had always had maybe a dream or a fantasy about being a high school drama teacher. And I did that for 4 years. I was a high school drama teacher. Had to still do some marketing, advertising, writing on the side, directing commercials, things like that, just to pay the bills. But that was a great time and was creative. And again, in my advertising marketing world life, I had worked on commercials, and again, I had this theater background and was kind of a hobbyist when it came to acting in plays, maybe. And then this moment happened around 2009, 2010, when DSLR cameras came out. That's when HD cameras became very accessible, just on the consumer level. And for people that aren't into cameras and stuff, like, you could change the lenses on it. You can make the images really look cinematic and look like movies. And it just hit me that, like, okay, if I don't do this now, like if I don't start making movies now, I'm just never going to do it. And it could be that the fact that I'm 40 years old at the time, and I feel like I'm too old to start something new, but maybe, the timing's just right, because I've spent all these years learning about art and storytelling and, honing my craft, so to speak, that maybe now the cameras, the technology is giving me my in. And that was a moment when a lot of people started. There's an explosion of social media at that time. There's, crowdfunding starts, film festivals explode. And I just caught that wave right at the top. And so,
good for you.
And so with my wife, Emily, we both kind of committed. We said, let's try this, let's make a short film. So we made a short film. Let's make a feature film. Let's make a feature film for $5,000. Let's make one for $8,000, So we just kind of steadily kept going. And at a certain point, I'd always thought it'd be fun to make a movie about a Christian rock band. And I remember actually the first time I met and had a conversation with Steve Taylor in the 90s, saying something to that effect, saying something about that, because I knew he was into film. And so there'd always been this story in my head. And at a certain point, I was like, I think this might be a thing. So I wrote it. And we started talking to producers, and we knew we'd need more money, and it would be a big jump, and we would probably need a couple famous people in it. And it just became the thing where Emily and I really focused in on the business part of it, developing investors in the film, looking into things like shooting in Georgia because there are tax incentives. Like, we just basically went to film production grad school on our own. And we had practiced the art for 8-9 years. We started honing that business pitch to it, to where in the summer of 2019, we're in Columbus, Georgia, shooting Electric Jesus with Brian Baumgartner from The Office and Judd Nelson and 6 amazing young actors and singers, musicians who are all going to be, I think, big famous stars someday. And it was like a real big movie. I mean, small for us, or big for us, small for Hollywood. Technically a low budget indie movie. It was a struggle putting the movie in the can for various reasons, but what wasn't a struggle was the art of it. And what wasn't a struggle by the time I got on the set is I knew the movie. And so much of what a director does in a film is keep everybody in the same film, hold the tone of the film. And I just had the sound of them talking and the look of the movie. It was the 80s, but I didn't want Stranger Things 80s. That's too on the nose. That's everybody's twisting a Rubik's Cube and listening to Michael Jackson. It seems like it's very in your face 80s. I want it to be like the 80s was lived in. And then also I wanted it to feel like a memory. So every shot of the movie, the camera's in the hands of the operator because it's a little fuzzy. It may not be true, everything you're seeing. And so I just knew the movie. And in fact, I had a conversation with Brian Baumgartner, and there's a scene where Skip, it's the first little moment where the cracks in the band manager's armor shows up. And this is kind of a spoiler, not too big of a spoiler, but a girl has snuck away with the band. And he's frustrated. He's mad. And her dad's out of the country on a mission trip, and her sisters are up in Ohio with their aunts, and he's stuck, and he's got to get to the gig. And he kicks over an ice chest and says, one of the kids laughing, and he says, "Shut your damn mouth, Scotty." Now, in my world, if a grown-up authority figure had said the word damn, we would have all just been like, oh no, somebody, an adult swore, and this is really bad. So we're doing the scene, and Brian, he says, shut your GD mouth. Like, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your podcast. You can censor it, but
we can bleep.
Okay. So
Yes,
Brian does a great read of the line. He goes, the first time he wails and kicks that ice chest over, and he says, shut your damn mouth, Scotty. And it's just like, okay, that's too much. Okay. And I go to Brian, I'm like, I'm not being a prude. It's okay. I mean, if the moment is true, it's true. But in my world, if you had said, shut your goddamn mouth, we would have left. Like, we would have called our parents. That would have been a sign that you were Satan himself. And he's like, really? Like, I think he was raised Episcopal or something. He's like, really? And I was like, yes. So damn is trust me, damn is going to punch those kids in the gut, and they know something's up, and the audience will know something up, but you can't. He's like, I don't know. I'm like, we'll do it both ways, but we're going to use the damn. Like, we're going to use that. And, but it was a great defining moment because that's just true to that scene. Like, the guy swearing and putting everybody on alert that this is a bad thing and potentially a dangerous situation is exactly what it needed. It didn't need that much. So by the time I get to set and I'm working with people like Brian, who played Kevin on The Office, of course, and is really funny and so talented, and I just knew my movie, So by the time we're there, we got it in the can, we got into edit. Of all places, we edit in Gwinnett County at OFS, right over there where they shoot all the Fast and Furious movies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my editor Scott Lansing has a setup over there, so ran the whole movie there.
I think I know Scott Lansing.
Are you kidding? You know Scott Lansing?
I know the name.
Okay.
I know
you
some
might
of the
know him
people.
from.
I know a couple people in the film industry. I know some people in the film industry up this way.
I bet you know Scott. He kind of looks like a bouncer. So when we hang out together, I always feel like he's my bodyguard.
You feel pretty safe. So going back to the moment, and you wanted it to feel lived in, and that's something that Steve and I talked about. Like, how difficult or easy was it to get some of the posters and the T-shirts? Because I was like, that would have been part of my dream. That would have been like about half the dream for me making the movie was that I would get to take that.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I was coveting.
Okay. So hats off to my music supervisor and CCM historian, John J. Thompson, who I've mentioned previously. But John knows all the artists pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
And so when we talked about Eric's bedroom, there's no way he could have that big of a Striper, yellow and black attack poster on his wall. But, the idea was as a memory, and maybe it's not all true, but John really has all that kind of stuff, and then has relationships with the artists to get the clearances on it. So we just went wild, like pretty much anything. Like, there's a scene where Scotty's doodling on a cover of Lifesavers, that record, which a great record, by the way.
Yep.
It hurt me. It hurt me deeply to see him do that. I have that record, and I would never do that.
Well, we had a bunch. We had a bunch of them. We just had the covers, so we could switch them out. They weren't really just sleeve. We had them made up in the prop department, so he could just doodle all day on it. But things like that, and this was the best thing. The best thing that we got. It's only in the movie for 2 seconds. Is we got Steve Taylor's confetti suit from the Limelight tour in 1986, and it's iconic because his album cover for On the Fritz has this cartoon of Taylor wearing that suit, and then when he did the show, he had a suit that looked like that, and I just written in the script in this montage that they are standing backstage. They look over and Steve Taylor's standing there, and they're like, "Wow." And it would just be an insider joke for people who really knew Christian music. And we reached out to Steven and said, "You don't happen to have the confetti suit?" And he goes, "I do." And we're like, "Can we borrow that?" He's like, "Yes." The problem is Steve Taylor's suit is built for a man that's like 6'2", like super tall. And like the skinniest human. It was something
like
crazy.
115 pounds.
Yeah, like the costumer said, okay, you're looking for an extra who's like 6'2" and has a 29-inch waist or something crazy. And we're like, okay. And that was very difficult to find. Yeah. But it was literally the suit. Like I remember seeing it hanging up in wardrobe and I was just like touching it. Like, oh my gosh,
crazy.
It's really the suit. But yeah, that kind of authenticity of that world is for people like you. I mean, it's so you can look at it and go, oh my gosh, yes. You know, I remember that 77's record, All Fall Down. He's holding it, you know, like there were some cassette tapes and just things a part of that world that were truly authentic to the time. And that's a tribute to John. He could pretty much dig up anything we could dream up. And the T-shirt, same thing. He would have a vintage T-shirt, and then we'd redesign we'd make a new design and have it screen printed on a new shirt.
Oh, okay.
So we were able to create all those pieces. Is
that how you got the Striper songs in there? As the same way with John?
Well, the first draft of the movie, the title of the film was actually To Hell with the Devil. That was the name of the movie. And the idea being like a call out to the Striper album, but also like these kids are going on a journey to hell with the devil. You know, it's kind of like a little double entendre in there. And we just realized that kind of sounds like a horror movie. If you didn't know what the movie was going to be. I mean, but at the time we started a conversation with Striper very early on about us doing the film. And, we knew that we wanted that lip sync scene with To Hell with the Devil that's in the middle of the movie. And I knew I wanted the band to do a Striper song, which ended up being Makes Me Want to Sing, which is kind of like a great intro. If you're seeing a Broadway musical, if Electric Jesus was a Broadway musical, that would be the first song in the thing, the idea that Jesus makes you want to sing. So, and we cleared that song to cover with the band and then cleared the re-record version of To Hell with the Devil.
Yeah, I have that album. Yeah, I knew which one it was.
Okay, good.
Nerd.
But and you do that. You know, it's better for the band. I think they make more money when you use.
Yeah, that's why they re-recorded it.
Yeah. So, but we became friends with them, and a few months ago, we went up to Massachusetts and screened the movie for Michael and his wife Lisa and some friends of theirs, and all of Striper was watching remotely in different places, and it was awesome. It was awesome, and they loved it. You know, I was really nervous. Like I give my speech before we show the movie, and we went to a movie theater. We rented a movie theater to show it, and I just said, "Look, this is like the myth of Striper. Okay, it's not you. We're not, you know." But then afterwards, he was just so pleased. He was like, "We're heroes in this thing. It's great." And he's like, "Can you use my whole song?" You know, like, so, yeah. So, and he even had cool stories about just Striper shows. You know, I don't want to talk much about the end of the movie, but there is a rough scene at the end where the band's it's not the beginning. The band's getting booed in this kind of rough rock and roll club. And Michael said, "Oh yeah, we played shows. We still play shows like that." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we play shows where people throw stuff at us and spit on us." And he's like, "It just makes us rock harder." Like
that's crazy.
He enjoys that. You know, it gives us something to play for.
Well, and you know, and that particular scene made me think a lot about because I was wrestling with because the movie is not a glamorous picture of the Christian rock life. Like if you've actually followed bands and you feel like you know, like granted now I think we have a clearer picture of a lot of these bands. We talked like our interview with Alan. He talks a lot about like how so many have fallen away and are no longer, you know, even consider themselves Christian in a lot of cases. But as far as the bands go, we had this sort of picture of them as being, you know, almost bigger than God in some cases. And I often wrestle with, even today, when I hear a song on the radio or I'm listening to an album that's from a Christian artist, it's like, they're not necessarily theologians. They were either just a bunch of kids writing some songs and they love Jesus. And, you know, how can they be responsible for my Christian growth?
Yeah.
When they themselves are probably struggling to figure out how to vocalize it anyway. So I think this movie does a pretty good job of portraying that and showing how it's not all rosy.
Well, I do like stories about losers. I think in my own life, I think you learn when you win stuff, you learn stuff. But I think when you lose, you can also learn. And a lot of times the things we learn, the hardest things we learn in life are when we've lost.
Yep.
So I'm drawn to stories where people don't make it. So, I knew in making the movie, this would not be the band that turned out to be, Third Day or something. They're not going to be successful at the end of the day. And there's so many reasons bands don't make it, Christian bands or otherwise. So many reasons. Like, it's such a miracle that any band makes it. There's just there's too many chances for it it's so fragile. Bands are so fragile. And I just, I thought, the band's not going to make it. There's going to be issues. There's going to be guys are in it for different reasons. There's going to be different spiritual maturity levels of people in the band. Mm-hmm. One of the things that Brian and I talked about with his character as the band manager, I said, at the core of Skip, your character, is he loves Jesus and he wants to share the gospel. You totally believe that. You would not do this if you didn't really believe it. But you are complicated. You've got problems, man. You've got habits and neuroses and experiences in life that have made you a shattered guy, and you're not getting help for it. You're on the road. You don't have your feet tied down anywhere. You don't have mentors and pastors in your life. You've got a little bit of Jesus driving you forward and a whole lot of other stuff. So that makes for a nuanced guy. He's not trying. It's like people making movies. You don't set out to try to make a bad movie. The worst movie you see, I promise, they thought it was going to be good. It's just so hard to make a good one. Right. And it's the same thing with a band. So we wanted it to be pretty unflinchingly honest about that. Like, to where at moments you're just like, well, of course this is not going to work out. There's just a bunch of teenagers from West Columbia, South Carolina, with a guy with a drinking problem is driving him around in a borrowed RV, and it's just not going to work. They're desperate for the love offering at the church, and then 2 seconds later they're dumping a show so they can go record an EP, and they're somehow trying to chase a record contract, or I don't even know what they're doing anymore. They're just they're just trying to keep the wheels turning and get to the next place. And I think in that I was going to say this. There's a scene where Eric, the main character, he's the sound man for the band, and he's got a crush on this girl that's ended up going around with the band. And she's a singer, a performer. And it's the kind of crush that I would always have when I was in high school. The kind where I'm already married to the girl. Like, we're already having children, going on vacations, and she has no clue. It's not like I haven't declared myself to her. It's not like I've not even tried to hold hands with her. I've just decided she's my girlfriend, And he sees her at a show, just kind of off to the side. He sees her kissing a guy, and he's heartbroken, furious, sick inside. I mean, I feel sick even watching it for him. I'm like, oh. And he does this thing where he makes her feel bad about it. And he actually uses spiritual, like, godly reasons to make her feel bad about it. Like, he says, why'd you even run? That's not very godly. You're just not a good person. I think there's a term we call it slut shaming, is what he does. And her response to it when she sees him the next day is, in the film, she apologizes, and she says she needs to be a better woman, and she's thankful for godly men like him in her life. Now, when I watch that scene, I cringe. I am of the mind that it's not a sin to kiss a boy, She's not done anything wrong that I'm aware of. I'm hurting for him. His heart's broken. But it's also like, she didn't know there was something going on there. And then the spiritual world that they're just engaged in is kind of used to make her feel bad and make him feel a little bit better and maybe get control back of the situation. I think that's messed up. I think that's wrong. I think that happens all the time. Happened then, happens now in spiritual communities where our faith or our whatever specific dogma we're using can become a thing to control and manipulate other people, right? Sad but true. Sure. But I felt like this is a movie that needed to go there. I think that this is a movie like this isn't a faith-based movie that's selling you a vision of Christianity that's perfect and works out and don't worry, you're right. This is a vision of I hope, of Christianity that's on the street, and this is actually what it would be like. And you step away from the movie and process it any way you want to, do with it however you want to. I just want it to be, as faulty as Eric's memory may be on some things, I want it to be a true telling of that world. You know, again, no axe to grind, not mad about anything. Just want to go there and get into it, and capture those moments when maybe a wiser person could have said, "Hey, Eric, you need to chill out. That girl wasn't your girlfriend, and you have no right to make her feel like crap. Right. Man up and tell the girl you like her, and then maybe they won't go kiss another boys." You know, right? That's what somebody needs to tell Eric, right?
Exactly. Well, and we've kind of alluded to it earlier, but just to make it clear to all the listeners, this is not a Kendrick Brothers movie. This is probably a little more rough around the edges, but one might say it's a little more real. You know, it's a little more almost believable.
I don't want to I don't want to stir this up or make it controversial, but something that Emily, my wife, and I always talk about is, you know, there's a very successful genre of faith-based or so-called inspirational movies. I think certainly Electric Jesus is faith-laced, maybe. It's very respectful of its character's Christianity. I am a Christian. But sometimes I get the impression looking at some kinds of Christian art, films or otherwise, sometimes Christian rock music, where it's so... it turns into a kind of Jesus propaganda. And I sometimes feel like, I don't think those people really believe it. I don't know that they really believe it, because I think if you're really living a life that has to do with faith, sometimes it's the worst. Sometimes the thing you want to work out doesn't work out and will not work out. Sometimes you pray all day for this person and they die anyway. You know, there's a reality, you know, the idea of living by faith doesn't mean that everything works out in the end. I mean, we hope, you know, the faith is that it does, that there's a life beyond this one, that it all works out in the end. But there's sad stories. There are tragic stories. Bad things happen to Christians all the time. And so I do think that there is a kind of Christian art that serves to reassure Christians, maybe, or make it feel like, you know, some of it gets into a little prosperity gospel-y kind of stuff where if you just act good things will happen. But I just want the art I make, whether it's talking, you know, the next movie I'm writing is not about Christians. It's a Gen X ghost story, you know, so it's not like I'm just here in the Christian space making Christian movies. But I do think if we're going to talk about faith and we're going to take it seriously, then we should take it seriously. You know, it's just like me and Daniel writing those Christian rock songs. They should be good songs. They shouldn't be joke songs or crap songs. I mean, even the death metal songs have to be good because we're doing this, man. Let's make the music good. Let's make it real. Let's make it true. So that's all. I don't want to like slam other Christian artists or whatever, but
I think there's a place for all that stuff. There really is. But there's honestly a place for this. Yeah, I don't know that we've ever had a this to fill this place. You know? Well,
I really appreciate you saying that, and I hope that is what this is. You know, somebody made this really astute observation. They were like, that moment where Christian music, something happens to Christian music in the 90s where there's a split happens and it goes to worship music and then just music that Christians are making. Up until then, Christian rock was pretty much you had to sing about Jesus. And then there's kind of a thing that happens. And I think my friend John calls it the Switchfoot moment. When Switchfoot blows up, now we can have Christians that just are a really good rock band, right? And I think maybe Christians or Christian film is at that moment. I think that Christians making films, I don't think the bubble of that kind of very kind of cheesy, melodramatic Christian propaganda movie, I don't know the audience is going to stay with that. Just because, I mean, our lives are complicated and people want, I feel like people, maybe our generation, Gen X, maybe, I think we're ready for a mature look at how faith is in the world. Not getting rid, I know a lot of people, it's very fashionable, especially if you grew up in evangelicalism, to deconstruct it and see the flaws in it. And I'm all for that. Like, I want to break down what's wrong with it. Where there's racism, where there's sexism, where there are problems, I'm here for it. Let's figure out what they are and let's fix that stuff. But also my deconstruction, my own exploration of my faith journey, which is in this movie, that's what this movie is. It didn't shake me out of the faith, I guess. It just made me ponder about it and think about it maybe more deeply, maybe more seriously than I had before. So I definitely think there's a place for people who are faithful to step into a world and really consider those things. And I do think that's where filmmakers, artists, musicians, that's a place where we can really excel. Is we get to be the people that ask the questions and create the complicated scenarios and then step away and let you sort through it with your friends and your pastor and your people in your life that can maybe help you work through some of that. But again, not getting too heavy. Electric Jesus is fun. It's meant to be a fun ride. And if you come out of the movie and you haven't thought any deep thoughts except for Commando for Christ is the greatest rock song I've ever heard, then we've done our job. That's fine.
Hey, let's all go Commando.
Yes, too. Yeah.
Well, that begs the question. It's because when I found out, and I either heard it, I think I heard an interview with Daniel Smith, and probably you were on that too. I honestly can't remember. It's been a few months ago. But when he was explaining about writing and it may have actually been on John's podcast. Were you guys on John's podcast?
Yeah.
But basically explaining how he was trying to write the best 80s hair band songs he possibly could. And I was thinking, of all the Christian artists in the world, how did he become the person to do? Because he's clearly very talented and he always has been, but I don't associate him or never have associated him with that genre, so to speak.
Okay. So a mutual friend introduced us several years ago. There was a podcast in development that never really came to fruition. And I was collecting interviews. I was talking to a lot of artists, Christian artists. And I was in New York City. Daniel's in New Jersey. I talked to some artists in New York, and then I took a train down to Clarksboro, New Jersey, where he is. Really to Philadelphia, I guess, is where I went. But so I go down there, and we just talked. We just had this conversation about art and memory, and it was a really cool, amazing conversation. And just driving back to the train station and stuff, I was talking, and I was telling him a little bit about this Christian rock music movie that I wanted to do. And I knew his work, and I know that he has incredible street cred. If you don't know Daniel Smith or Danielson family, just look it up, whatever service you're listening to. It would be very alt rock, alt folk. Daniel produced Sufjan Stevens' first record. Sufjan used to be in his band, played drums for Danielson. There's a really great documentary you guys should watch called Danielson Family Make a Joyful Noise or something. It's really good. There's a doc about him and his family, really good. But as we talked, he's like, yeah, man, when I was in middle school, I was like all into Def Leppard, and that was before I actually had taste. He was like, man, I don't know, maybe you heard REM, or I started liking U2, and then my dad was really wanting me to like Christian music, but I couldn't. I liked Larry Norman, but I didn't, and it just stuck. It just stayed in my head. And as we started getting down to working, the main thing I think about Daniel is he's not a cynic. He's not cynical. And that's the biggest thing to me. You can't be a cynic. You have to fight that off, that urge. That'll kill you. That'll eat you up in middle age if you start getting really cynical about things. So when I find another middle-aged friend who's like, I'm not a cynic, and they aren't looking at everything as messed up and it's all a scam and you're getting ripped off, and they're alive with possibilities, and have an ear for melody like he has. Like his songs are really built on melody. We both have a love for Paul McCartney, and like post Beatles, like the cheesy Paul McCartney everybody hates, like Wings, and we love that kind of stuff. And so when we started talking about the songs, I was like, I think there has to be great songs at the core. I'll do cheesy lyrics, I'll be the 15-year-old lyricist, but I got to have a beautiful song at the core of the song, and we'll build it up into an 80s rock song. But then we're going to take those melodies, and that'll be the score of the movie. Those songs will pop up in the movie. And then there'll be a richness and a depth to the music. And he was just all for that. And, it was so hard. It's hard to do that. It's hard to not be Spinal Tap. And I was thinking about today, those Spinal Tap songs are hilarious, and This is Spinal Tap's hilarious movie. Mm-hmm. But I just don't go back and listen to the Spinal Tap songs over and over. Like I might put one on a joke playlist for somebody, but I don't take them seriously as songs. And so I wanted people to take this seriously as songs. Like the movie Once, John Carney's movie Once, with Glenn Hansard, amazing movie, because the songs are incredible. And he developed the songs with the Frames, his band. Like a lot of those songs he had played for years.
Yeah, it's like a greatest hits of his songs from the Frames.
Yeah. It's just a dream. It's just a dream. And so I love that movie, and I wanted to have that kind of effect. I wanted to have songs that had some staying power.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie A Mighty Wind?
Oh yeah, of course. Those are great.
But the music in that one, I think they were a little more in love with. Like,
yes.
I think they were.
Yes.
They were totally mocking.
Yeah.
Metal, hair metal, rock,
yeah.
and Spinal Tap. But they had some kind of fun songs, like jokey songs in A Mighty Wind too. But there was also this element of A Mighty Wind where you're like, I think they actually like this stuff.
Yeah,
like, I think they really love it.
Isn't that a great lesson maybe for artists? Like there is a kind of art that's pissed off and angry and is, punching at something and trying to destroy it or tear it down. There's a kind of satire that's really strong like that. And I love stuff like that. But parody that's mean or parody that's just angry, to me usually is too angry. It's bitter. And you're right. That is the difference, because in Mighty Wind, they're in love with the music. They're in love. The musicians are cheerful. Everything about that is
they're still making fun of the era. I mean, they're still pointing out some of the ridiculousness of the time and the era and the folk scene and all that stuff. But at the same time, I think they like the music, right? Because you listen to the music and you're like, this is actually beautiful. Like they're doing a really good job. And take it for what you will, but I see a lot of the same stuff in Electric Jesus, where I think you're making fun of, or not maybe making fun, but showing some light on some of the ridiculousness that was going on around that time. But at the same time, there was a love for it. I mean, you can't watch that scene it's about 30 minutes in, and you already mentioned it. It's like 2 or 3 minutes where he's just rattling off. I think I read an article where you said you had it be 66 bands on purpose because it was 66 books of the Bible or something. But he's just rattling off bands, and I'm going check, yep, had that album. I mean, it's like I think I had an album by like at least 60 of them. And then I mean, but you don't have a list like that if you don't have some love for it, some nostalgic sort of connection to it. And so,
I think Christian rock often gets a bad rap. It's belittled a lot of times by people. It's just subpar. And there's a lot of bad secular music too. There's tons of bad pop music. I mean, how many Christian records were released in 1988? I don't know. Let's say 100. How many secular pop rock records in 1988? Probably 1,000, yes, let's say, 70% of 100 records is 70 bad records, but 30 really good ones. And 70% of, 1,000 records, that's a lot more bad music than just in Christian music. So like, I get it. I mean, I think there's something about really evangelical on the nose message music that irritates people that aren't Christians. That just feels, just stop, just leave me alone, like it's irritating. And so I think it makes us it makes people angry a little bit more about it. But I mean, is there bad Christian music? Yes. Did I have cassettes? Yes.
Me too.
I don't return. I had a Christian record. I'm not even going to name the band, but I was like, oh man, I really like this record in 1986. And I even had a t-shirt from this band. And I put it on when I was writing Electric Jesus, and I couldn't get through one song. I was like, ooh, that's bad. And then next song, oh, this is terrible, And then I pull out a great album by a band called Elim Hall. They had one album, Elim Hall, Elimhall, from Canada, kind of like Police-y, kind of like maybe the Police or kind of a moody U2, Police U2, and that. I was just like, I couldn't stop listening to that record. I was like, this was great,
What's crazy is it was called Things Break, I think.
Things Break, yeah.
But it's like they came out with one album. They were fantastic. They were on a major label. They disappeared.
Yeah,
what happened?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
It goes back to what you're saying about movies and bands. It's all, you get a whole bunch of creative people together, and creative people, are so good at showing up on time and, being so reasonable. I'm joking. As someone who's been in a lot of bands and I'm an author, and, I would love to write a screenplay one day. That's on my bucket list. But all that to say is, I'm around the creative people a lot. And so I think you're right. It's one of the things that makes me so excited to see a good movie or find a good band is because I know this took a long time. Like even one hit wonders, they say take 10 years or something like it really does take lightning in a bottle just to get one album made that's really good. Like something has to happen. Stars have to align, or whatever you want to say. I think movies are the same way. Like there's so many different pieces that have to work for it to be good, and one of them can just suck, and then the whole thing will just go in a tank.
We had I can't say release date of the film, but we do have distribution for the film. The film's going to be out in the world this summer, and we were having a meeting just yesterday with the company that's going to bring Electric Jesus into the world, and it's a really thrilling thing to have an opportunity, this thing, like you said, that's just taken years, and you capture lightning in the bottle maybe, and then you have like a really great company that is excited about it and sees potential in it. And but even there, I still feel like I'm holding this very fragile thing.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, guys, this isn't a faith-based movie. This isn't a Christian movie. Trust me, Christians will find it and Christians will love it. But don't sell it to Christian people, because there are enough Christian people will be like confused by it and just won't get it as a movie. But the Christians that find it on their own or it's just a movie out in the world. It's a Brian Baumgartner thing about a Christian rock band. It's weird.
Or Judd Nelson.
Funny. Or Judd Nelson, right? Yeah. But if you're a Christian and you find it, it feels like, it's like when you first heard that, U2 was a bunch of Christians. It's like, oh, wow, that's mine. So, and that's a real nuanced thing to not like, again, even with a movie like this, you don't want to beat people over the head. I've had some Christian movie film kind of people that have seen the film and made certain suggestions that if you did this would be, like a big Christian film. And it's like, that's not what this is though, and we made it at a budget where we could make our money back. We don't have to make $1 billion or something on this movie. Let's put something very true out there, and let's let it be what it is, and let's see who comes around to it, who rallies around it, and let's see who's it's going to be on somebody's. There will be people that see the movie that say, that's like top 10 movie. I love that movie so much. There'll be people that hate it. But let's let that breathe, and let's let it be what it is, and not try to make it something it's not.
Well, to your point earlier, I think that we live in such a unique time that with streaming services, with YouTube, with online, with websites, there's so many opportunities. Like you were saying 10 years ago, for the cameras to be more affordable, and you could make, at least the quality of the picture you could know was good, right? Now it just makes things so much more accessible that, and there are still, I think, a few here and there, little corners of the evangelical sort of Christian culture, little entertainment world, but those are going away. I mean, like Christian bookstores are all closed. Like I think it's a very unique time where original things can get made, and sometimes that can suck. But sometimes you get little nuggets of amazing little movies that somebody had a dream and they got to make because Netflix or Amazon Prime or Apple TV or someone they're looking for content, and they're willing to take a chance on something.
There is a movie that is, I don't know, it could win Best Picture this year. It's called Minari. And
I haven't seen it yet. I so want to see it. I lived in Korea for 4 years. I want to see this movie.
Okay. Well, it's set in Arkansas. It's about a Korean family that settles in Arkansas in the early 80s. But the filmmaker, his name is Lee Isaac Chung. He's nominated for Best Director. I think they're probably up for Best Screenplay. I know they have several actors up.
Yeah.
I know him. He is a Christian. He's one of the most, he's one of the most impressive people you ever meet, not just as an artist, but as a husband, a dad, as a Christian. But he is a world-class artist in every way. And the film he made, Minari, which is a family drama, which is filled with comedy and also like really dramatic, sad stuff. It's a beautiful, beautiful, important, powerful movie. And one, I don't know that a lot of Christians are even going to think to see it. Here it is. There is a Christian, a Christian that has a film in the world that's up for Best Picture, like the highest award you can get in film in the world. He's up for it. His film is, I would say, faithful. His film is faith-laced, like Electric Jesus. The family goes to a Christian church. There are Christian characters that aren't insane, or
aren't total
evil.
jerks the whole time.
No. It is a movie that Christians should be rallying around, but it's also complicated and artful, and it's not like all the movies that we see as Christians. So that's one thing. Like, Christians need to support that movie. I mean, if you want Christians to have a voice in culture, and you want Christians making great art, there it is. That is it. But the other thing is, which is good for Isaac and the team that's around Minari, is because of streaming and because of theaters being shut down in the past year, I think the film, and I haven't looked at the numbers, but it seems like the film's doing better business than if it had come out. If it had come out in theaters, last fall, and it was playing big city art houses, and or the Terra in Atlanta.
Yeah, it would be competing with the big movies.
Exactly.
Out there.
But now, because we can click a button and stream this movie, you could do it tonight and see Minari. I can't wait to see the business reports and the white papers on this, but I think that movie's going to do better business in this environment. And trust me, when you go into a movie theater, there are costs and expenses that the movie is responsible for just by committing to be in the theater that are expensive. And a flop at the theater is bad for the filmmakers. A hit is huge, but a flop at the theater is bad. So I'm hopeful that movies like Minari, other small movies, and not just because Isaac's a Christian and all that, but I'm hopeful that that's a good sign for those transactional streaming movies. That is a really boring part of this conversation you can take out because we're talking deep cut film business. It's film business. It's boring, but seriously, Minari, 100%. Get behind that movie.
But I think for music is the same way. I think it's harder to find thoughtful Christian artists. It's harder to find nowadays because. But I think there's a lot more opportunities for that sort of stuff out there because.
Sure.
You don't have the big conglomerate hold on the distribution like you do. And so I just think it's a very unique time for authors. You can, you can self-publish and suck, and you can self-publish and be awesome, right?
Right.
There's inroads, which can be good and bad, but I think ultimately it allows for some more risk-taking sort of artsy sort of things that would not have happened in Family Bookstore or, in 1992, right?
Exactly. But we got to nurture that audience. And I think as curators, you're curators and artists on this podcast. Part of doing a podcast is to engage listeners and grow and develop their taste in things. So hats off to you.
Yeah. And I think when you were talking about like the audience will find it and the audience will know, kind of, and it's like for me that moment was when Render Love came on as like a background track, and I'm like, okay, they picked the choir and then they picked sort of like a random early track that it's a beautiful song, one of my favorites.
Steve loves the choir.
I love the choir too.
So it's like when that kicked in, I'm like, okay, these are my people.
I wanted a song from Chase the Kangaroo, that album, but that was 1987 or 88, so it wouldn't have fit the time period. So I was crushed. But I still can listen to Clouds or Consider or what's that song called? I think just Consider.
Consider.
Yeah, that album is that was a big one for me.
Well, and the thing is too, it's like because as you hear the 77s kick in, Lifesavers, Daniel Amos, all these guys, I've I'm a big 77s fan because if you listen to our first podcast, it was like our top 3 albums. My number 1 album is Sticks and Stones.
Yeah, great.
So mine's Pretty Naked. One of my top 3 is Pretty Naked.
Yeah. But the thing I've always thought, like, they're a perfect band for a soundtrack. Anybody could just grab their song, and they have gotten song. I think MT's been on some TV shows and some stuff before, but not like a end credits theme or not like a, major song. But it's great to watch a movie where all these bands and artists that I've listened to are the soundtrack, literally.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Like with that song, Do It for Love, that song became the landing for the movie. Like at a certain point, I knew that was going to play at the end. And it is the first position credit song in the film. Mm-hmm. And so me and my editor, we knew we had the movie if we could land there and then come out in Do It for Love, which to me just really captured a lot of what the joy of my youth group and the joy that I think at the best moment those guys in 316 and Sarah and all them have on the summer of 1986. They have that revelatory moment. And in fact, in the credits, we play like outtakes and bloopers with that song. It just feels happy.
Yeah.
So I love that song. We also use Ba 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 in the movie.
Yeah.
And that was a song we used in screen tests when we were screen testing for Eric and Sarah. There was a scene we created for the actors. We had 3 sets of actresses trying out, and it was a skating rink scene and kind of a mashup of a bunch of scenes with Sarah and Eric. And Eric had to enter with that song playing in the skating rink, and he had to, kind of dance to it, but not be too obvious. So it was everybody that auditioned for the movie became 77 fans because of that song, which is awesome. And it should be in an 80s movie. Well, it has been in Electric Jesus.
Oh yeah,
exactly. I mean, it's a great song for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
One other, we don't have to go long on it, but Rob Castle showing up in the movie, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
He's Rob.
Yeah. So actually in the script we had written, that was Rick Kua. And what happened, and Rick Kua's still alive, and Rick Kua's great and everything, but I was remembering a concert I had seen on the back of a flatbed truck. I was at my grandmother's house in Chattanooga. Me and my sister walked down to the mall near her house, and there was a Christian concert happening, and Rick Kua was playing his bass to a track, like playing his bass and singing. And it was one of the strangest things. There was no band. It was just a bass player singing, which Rick Kua was a bass player. And so in the script, I always had this Rick Kua song in that spot. And it was at some point, me and the music supervisor were talking, and he was like, "Hey, do you remember Rob Castles?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You know, he like lives near you. Like he's in Anderson, South Carolina. Like you guys are in the same neighborhood. You should use one of his songs." And I was like, "Oh yeah, like Rob Castle's like Kamikaze Christian." And then I listened to that Off the Wall song. And I called John. I was like, "This song is awesome, man." He goes, "Yeah, we should." I was like, could we do that instead of Rick Kua? Could we like have Rob Castles? And he was like, "Sure. Yeah. Call Rob. You call him. Ask him if you can use the song." So I kind of became friends with Rob over the song. But in the movie, the real Rob Castles is in the audience. And it would take a very seriously devoted Christian music fan to pick him out of the crowd. But he's fantastic. Steve. Yeah, that's you knew that was Rob. But on the day, we'll release this video at some point. But on the day, we had the scene in the can of the actor playing Rob Castles, and I asked for one more take, and I made Rob get on stage with him and sing lip sync with young Rob. So it's like old Rob, young Rob doing the whole thing. We had a lot of extras there that day, and everybody was going crazy. It was like a Rob Castles concert. It was awesome.
Yeah, I met him a long time ago.
Yeah.
He was touring with Milo Lefebvre.
Yeah,
I met him at his merch table, and I just remember he was just a giant.
Oh, he's jacked. That guy is ripped even now. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on. We probably ought to wrap this up now.
Yeah.
Well, look, once the movie comes out and is out in the world, we could do another. If you wanted to do just a recap, and I can We'll talk some more if and especially, if people listening had specific questions about the movie or the song, or maybe I could bring one of my actors on with you guys if you had questions.
That would be so good. Can it be spoiler filled, the next one? Because I have a lot of questions, and I'm like, I can't ask that question because it's not even out yet.
Okay, well, you can ask me questions as long as you agree not to share those.
We'll do those after we say goodbye. How about that?
But I like the recap idea. The recap idea is amazing.
Yeah, we should do that. And later this summer.
That would be amazing.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much for being on. I mean, I've been following the movie for probably a couple of years now, maybe.
Oh, great. I'm glad
when you guys were still filming, I was checking out your Instagram, and so I've been following the journey.
Come down, man. You should have sent a message and said, I'm totally geeked out on this stuff. Come on. Let me hang out.
I should have. The thing is, I physically have a T-shirt from the Steve Taylor 1985 on the Fritz tour. I Although it's skin tight now,
Yeah,
it would look
right.
horrible on me.
Hey, man,
but
you're
somebody
still-
else could have worn it.
If you can still get it on your torso, it counts. You're
right.
making.
Oh,
it.
I can get it on there. I won't be able to
All right.
breathe, but I can get it on.
It's a good goal.
For sure. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks,
so
Chris.
much appreciate
this is awesome.
Absolutely.
Hey, and
Thank you, guys.
Everybody, how can they connect with the movie and sort of follow it and understand and know when it's coming out? We'll post it up and everything, but I want to make sure that they connect with you guys.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is electricjesusfilm.com. And there you can get on our mail list for the G's team. You get all the updates in the newsletter that comes out every 30 or 40 days. But social media is pretty active. We do a good job, I think, with that. On Facebook, if it's eJesusFilm, so facebook.com/eJesusFilm, and then Twitter, the same, eJesusFilm, and Instagram, eJesusFilm. And we try to keep people up to date. I don't know when this episode will post. It will, like right now, you can see the film at the Kansas City Film Festival, but it's probably it'll be over this weekend, and that'll be before this episode posts. But there are several more festival screenings. A lot of festivals this year are virtual, so you can see the film. It doesn't cost a lot of money to see it at a festival. But if you hang tight with us, you will see the film very soon. It'll be available everywhere very soon this summer. But to kind of whet your appetite, any streaming service you're on is playing the Electric Jesus soundtrack. That is 21 original songs from the movie. You can kind of get the lyrics down to Barabbas, so you can sing along when you get to the movie. And then
I can't sing that high though. That's the problem.
No, it's crazy. It's crazy. But also Joyful Noise Recordings, our record company, has a double gatefold vinyl LP version of the soundtrack, which is for sale now. It's taken them forever to print these records, but they will be in record stores this summer, and you can pre-order now. It's not a lot of money, and that is a beautiful packaged piece of vinyl, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty great.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
To jump on that, I'm a big vinyl guy. I have way more than I should.
You got to have this, Steve. You got to have this vinyl.
He does. And
great.
I've been saying on the podcast that doing this podcast with Steve has hurt my wallet more than anything.
Yeah.
Because Steve keeps introducing me to all these like special pressings of the vinyl. Of all these
dude.
albums. And
It's addictive.
It is.
Hey, I got this. Check that out.
Oh yeah, I got mine too.
I've got this is just the ones I have upstairs.
Right. It's like the scene of Eric all over again.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
Rattling
trust
off his
me.
bands.
Yeah.
If you come, not that you would want to hang out in my basement, but if you ever came and hung out in my basement, it would be that.
Oh yeah. I definitely broke a commandment in his basement. The but just if on my wish list now is that however long that scene is, what is it, 2 or 3 minutes, that whatever, the 66 bands, if we could have that clip and use that for our, as the intro of our podcast, that is the best.
Okay, let me rip that. Let me see if I can get that for you. I'm making a note right now. There is a t-shirt on our website for sale that has all 66 bands. Yeah,
okay,
look at it.
No, that's done.
It's just a black t-shirt that has all of them listed.
Okay, I gotta get that.
It's crazy. It's
that's
great.
happening.
That might have to be the official T-shirt of this podcast.
That might be. That might be the official church.
It's so goofy. It's so cheesy, and we just got so many comments on that scene when we started playing festivals. And I called the designer. I was like, could there just be a shirt that just had the band names on? And that's it. And he was so like, and it's like and maybe you could highlight your favorite. Like you could just take a yellow Sharpie and color the ones that you like or something, or black out the ones you didn't like.
No, it's got to be neon. It's got to be a neon.
That's right.
Sharpie.
That's right. So I mean, check it out. It's pretty. It's pretty.
Man,
ridiculous.
I got to get. That's done.
Yeah.
It's going to be purchased. Right,
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you, man.